I've lived in Alaska my entire life. I live in one of the more populated parts of the state. I won't fully disclose for my safety, though I've seen a lot of things and I'm not even very old. I've seen dang near everything Alaska has to offer. Well, I thought anyway. It turns out cryptids are a lot more angry up here. We have the classic Sasquatch, otter people, dogmen, serpents, our own version of the boogeymen, wendigos and even skinwalkers, believe it or not. I've had the displeasure of being hunted by two of these. And take a wild guess. It started when I was at my friend's house, sitting at the ridge of the border of the property. Where we sat had a trail leading up and a light pole. It was around 11 at night, but Alaska's winters get dark. We were sat under the yellow light from the pole when I heard a branch snap and snow crunch. I assumed it was a moose, so I told my friend to keep their eye out. They nodded and we continued to talk. A few minutes later, the snow crunched again and I felt my heart freeze. Now, I'm a pretty paranoid person, but this was well before it had really taken effect. I'm still unsure which of the two cryptids it was, but it had infrasound. Infrasound is something big cats and other predators use to activate a prey's fight or flight, usually ending up in the prey freezing. According to whatever the predator was, I was its next meal. I grabbed my friend by the hood and stood up and ran down the trail, pulling them along with me. They groaned in protest and confusion until I told them that something was wrong. We ended up going inside that night and I didn't get a wink of sleep. I was too afraid of what was waiting outside. Fast forward to a few months later, it was July. I was sat with my window open writing on my computer. I was home alone as I often am, but that didn't bother me. As I typed on my laptop, I felt something strange. That intense feeling of being watched. I tried to ignore it, but it overtook my body. I looked out of the window to the edge of my driveway, next to the pond, and there it stood. A pale gray, malnourished, disgusting-looking creature. Sunken-in eyes, slightly protruding teeth, and on all fours nonetheless. Though this creature had a human-like body, aside from the twisted appendages, I froze on my spot when it caught my eye. I shoved my computer away from me and got up to cranking my window. Once my window started moving, so did it. Inching closer to my home with lanky, broken-looking legs, I wound my window up enough, flipped the lock, and I pulled down my curtain. That was the first night I had ever spent cowering in my bathtub with a pocket knife and a blanket. I hadn't seen the creature again until later in the year, winter. I was taking the garbage down to the end of my driveway when I heard the inhuman growling. It sounded like a dog had smoked 20 packs a day and tried to growl at me. I wasn't taking any chances and I sprinted up to my porch, slamming open my door and locking every lock. My mom looked mortified, as was I. This happened on a few separate occasions, but this wasn't even all of it. I would walk to the bus stop in the mornings, so obviously this could be an issue. One morning, my cat, Fergus, had followed me down to the bus stop. I was petting him as I stood next to a stop sign. Now, Fergus is the sweetest cat I'd ever met. He didn't bat an eye at dogs, moose, or other cats. Nothing. He was a badass and a sweetheart in one cat. Now imagine my surprise when he spun around, arched his back, and started hissing and sputtering. I was horrified. This beefed up Mannacoon cat was hissing into the darkness at 6 in the morning. Thankfully, the bus had come to my aid and I got on immediately. Fergus passed away recently, so I'm a little nervous about not having that warning next time. Now these next few experiences all happened in the span of a week. It started with me sitting in my living room watching some show when I heard something on the porch. This was before I had a security system, so I could really see it. There's a small, obscure window at the top of my door, but I'm just shy of tall enough to see out of it, so I had to go by sound. I slowly crept around my house, making sure each door and window was locked up. I hurried my dog into my parents' room and into the bathroom. He likes hiding in the shower, so he didn't really mind. Though when he started snarling, which he never does, I almost started sobbing. The layout of my parents' room is, you walk in, there's their bed, 2 windows on either side of the bed, and the bathroom next to one of the windows. My mom put the spare mattress we had up in front of that window. I hadn't locked it. I frantically dialed my mom's number and called her quietly while hugging my dog. I was crying. She ended up coming home a few minutes later. When she went to get me out of her bathroom, there were scratch marks on the wall. Something had tried to get in. This was when my paranoia spell started. I would frequently have episodes of pure, irrational fear, usually ending in me sleeping in my bathroom. A few times like this one, it was warranted. I was once again sitting in my living room watching a show when I heard something in the carport. The wall behind me was the one connecting to said carport. I got up, walked closer to the TV and turned it down, listening to each thudding step of the thing outside. I began to shake and spiral into a panic attack. It slammed on one of the walls and I booked it to my bathroom. I locked myself inside with my knife, my phone, and my charger. I wasn't prepared to hear it behind me, through the wall to my backyard. The only way to get in is to hop the fence, unhinge the door, or crawl over the massive boxes blocking off the back porch. I didn't care which it had done, but I was mortified nonetheless. This thing had definitely known where I was in the house. Eventually, it stopped and it must have left, so I left the cramped room to check on my dog. He was fine, though shaken. The last time that I had seen it had by far been the worst. I haven't had near as close of an experience since. I was on a Discord call with my friends, eating food and chilling in my kitchen. I was having a good time when I had the overwhelming feeling of being watched. I knew exactly what it was, so I looked down to the bottom corner of my back door. My back door has a wide window encompassing pretty much the entirety of it, with a curtain that came with it. Peeking out from the sliver of room the curtain left was sunken-in eyes and gray skin. It was staring up at me. I grabbed my phone and I ran to the bathroom for safety once more. After not hearing it for a while and having my friends calm me down, I went to my room. I knew the window was locked and closed. I felt a little bit safer there, but boy was I wrong. I had been halfway asleep when I heard ungodly scratching at my window. I was obviously confused and scared at the sound, and when I peeled back my curtain, I was faced with that ungodly thing, with its fingers protruding through the window. I dropped the curtain and ran to my parents' room into the crawl space in their closet, knowing this thing couldn't find me there. I had closed the door to the room itself and the closet on my way in. When I heard the mattress blocking my parents' window fall, careening under their bed, with terrible scratching and snarling, I heard my dog going crazy outside of the door. This disgusting thing was stalking around my parents' room looking for me. I heard each deliberate step, each gruff and breath of air. I was frozen on the ladder of the crawl space. I hadn't even turned the light on, which would be my saving grace. I heard the closet door whine as it was opened. This thing could open doors. It sniffed around my parents' clothing. I heard it step on the slab of wood, keeping me hidden. I don't know how it didn't find me. Maybe it was the smell of the carpet, but it eventually booked it and left. I stayed down there almost the entirety of the night, until I heard my mom come home. That was the last time she left me home alone late at night, especially during the winter. In my hometown, which shall not be named due to everyone being stalkers, we have this old abandoned warehouse that people love to deface and steal from. It was never sold due to the events that led up to it being abandoned. Let's just say a lot of superstition and speculation are around it. The warehouse is pretty large and made mostly out of steel. Its largeness is often taken advantage of by the homeless looking for a place to stay. Though most seem to last no more than a few hours, and the ones that do, well, we think they may have found a new place to stay, or ended up over at the next town. Either way, they weren't there the next day. I don't think anyone ever really bothered testing these superstitions and speculations of why it's abandoned to see if they were true before my friend and I came along. We didn't see anything unusual about this particular abandoned warehouse. It seemed normal. The roof was a little worn, and the entrance door was caved in, and there was some shattered glass, to which I can only guess some neighborhood kids threw something at them and they shattered. It also had some rooms which looked rather untouched, which was the only thing that we had found odd. Anyway, we went there on a dare from a previous camping trip. They dared us to stay for a night, so we did. When we got there, it was nearing the afternoon, so we scoped the place out to find any exit doors or possible escape routes because we didn't want to risk something happening and us getting lost amidst it. We found a few, and once we were content with all the possible routes, we started making our camp. We had a tent, some sleeping bags, a lighter, 2 flashlights, and a few cans of food and a couple waters for the night. One thing we realized way too late was that after drinking all of that water, we had nowhere to go to the bathroom. My friend realized this earlier than I did. He had to go. So we looked around and there were some shrubs outside which we could use. He didn't want to go in the bush at this point because it had become dark outside. So I told him to quit being a baby and go. He took his flashlight and he left. After a few minutes, he came back in and got ready for bed. I discovered that I had to go too, so I grabbed my flashlight and off I went. As I got closer to the spot that my friend had used, I noticed these weird markings on the wall. They were slightly slanted right on the wall and were kind of jagged. I just assumed it was graffiti art, and I went about my business. After finishing, I decided to check around to see if there were any more. I found more along the side of the building, and following them eventually led me to ending up outside of the shack that was back behind the warehouse. It was a tool shack, but the floor was glowing underneath the door. I decided that it would be best to leave it alone, but then I began to hear noises coming from it. They were muffled, but still there. I listened for a few minutes and then I called out. Hello? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was dead silent. I began to wonder if I had just imagined it. So I left and went back to the camp. I crawled into bed and just as I put out my flashlight, I got an eerie feeling and I couldn't help but feel very disturbed by what I saw. I'm not even sure that I saw anything because there could possibly be an explanation, right? But it ate at me and I couldn't fall asleep. And so I snuck out and went back for a glance while my friend was sleeping. As I got closer, the door was still glowing, and I took all of my courage I had saved up and I opened the door. What I saw, I will never forget. My friend was tied upside down, hanging from the ceiling with a gag in his mouth. The light I saw, it was from his flashlight that he had taken with him that was still on. I took a good look at him and touched him. His eyes shot open and he began trying to speak. He began struggling and thus was making a lot of noise with the metal chains clanking. I tried to calm him down the best I could. "Don't freak out, James. I'm gonna get you down, but you have to remain calm, okay?" I then decided to lock the door before I got him untied. After he was untied and ungagged, I began to pry out what had happened. He told me that when he went out to pee, the thing, as he called it, called out to him in my voice. It then led him over to a secluded area where it knocked him out and dragged him to the shed. He begged for us to leave and told me that it didn't matter where we went as long as we got out of here. I agreed, and as we were walking towards the door, we heard a soft knock. We didn't respond. A few minutes had passed before it replied.
"I know you're in there. Just come out."
We didn't answer.
"Please, it's for the best. There are things you don't know about this place."
No answer. I heard him sigh before saying,
"I just hope you haven't done anything. I know it looks bad to have something that looks exactly like me hanging from my ceiling in metal chains, but understand this. If I had known you had found this shed, I would have never put the monster in it."
I was horrified because now I didn't know if the monster was out there or in here.